Welcome to the Alaska Weather Show. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan, coming to you from the National Weather Service on this Monday, July 12th, 2021. And as always, if you'd like additional weather information, go online. We have all sorts of weather information at weather.gov and then / gives you Alaska. But if you just look at weather.gov, you can look anywhere across the country to check up on the weather where your friends or family may live. And certainly shows where other significant weather watches and warnings are also happening. Well, let's take a look at what we got coming up here this week. Gulf low pressure system that's sitting out there east of Kodiak Island will just sit and spin and gradually weaken as we go through this week. There'll still be some areas of light rain and light rain showers lingering in south central coastal areas as well as in the southeast panhandle. But the interior is warming up along the Yukon River, Kuskokwim River basins. We're enjoying a couple of really nice days, warm and drier, especially in the southwest. It's been so cloudy and wet there for the past month. A cold front, though, is approaching the Arctic coast and North Slope. That'll be pressing southward on Tuesday and approaching the Yukon River. So that's going to bring about some higher fire danger Tuesday afternoon and evening over east central areas as southwest breezes pick up ahead of that front. There'll also be a few isolated thunderstorms with some lightning strikes possible there beginning Tuesday afternoon and evening, and we'll see some additional showers and storms as that front just slowly sinks south and southeastward. So here's where the fire danger is highest, at least as of today, and you can see along and north of the Alaska Range, and especially up there around Fairbanks on through the Yukon Flats. It will be breezy and dry Tuesday with isolated storms with that approaching cold front coming in from off of the Brooks Range. And then Wednesday, the relative humidity will be coming up a bit with scattered showers and some storms, but we'll have to keep an eye on some lightning strikes, though we're not anticipating the winds to be too bad then. But as far as the satellite imagery, you can see Gulf of Alaska. It's just that counterclockwise swirl. The center of circulation for that low pressure is east of Kodiak Island, and it's brought just some waves of moisture, showers, or light areas of rain. In fact, since Saturday, Kodiak and Cordova have picked up nearly 2 inches of rainfall. So this has been a wet system for south central areas. We also had some gale force winds along the northern Gulf Coast there this weekend, which is rather unusual for the summertime. As we look off to the northwest, you'll see hints of that front beginning to approach the Arctic coast in kind of just the way the cloud bands are kind of curled back from northeast to southwest. And then if we look out south of the central and eastern Aleutians, there's another area of low pressure, this one not as strong, but it is heading eastward with some areas of rain or rain showers. And weak high pressure is situated over the eastern Bering, and that is tending to keep some lower cloudiness, a marine layer, and fog going. In fact, a fog advisory remains in effect tonight through the day Tuesday for St. Lawrence Island, as there have been some areas of denser fog there. So again, the low is just going to sit and spin in the Gulf there and gradually weaken in the days ahead. Still, though, with the circulation around it, we have some bands of light rain or light rain showers that will each day become less and less and more scattered. If you look across much of the interior, though, today, we have VFR conditions for the aviators out there and just sunshine and warmer temperatures up and down the Yukon River Valley. And by late tonight, early tomorrow morning, we'll see that cold front moving up in through the North Slope, and areas of fog continuing along and off the west coast with that low pressure sitting there in the Gulf, just sitting and spinning. And then on Tuesday, there's that cold front crossing the Brooks Range, approaching the Yukon River, and with it, we expect southwest winds to be increasing out ahead of it, along with dry conditions, so the fire danger will be elevated there north of the Alaska Range, and especially up through east central areas to the Alaska-Canadian border. And we can even see a few thunderstorms pop up along that front, as there will be enough instability, so that could also add to the fire threat there with some cloud-to-ground lightning strikes that could cause holdover fires. Well, taking a look on Wednesday, that frontal boundary sags south-southeastward, and we should see a few more scattered showers and storms along and the south of that boundary. So the weather will be somewhat more unstable there through the mid-upper Yukon Valley. And the low just continues to weaken out over the Gulf of Alaska, whereas weak high pressure will remain in place over the southeast Bering and down into the North Pacific south of the eastern Aleutians and the tip of the Alaska Peninsula. So we kind of talked about this already, so I'll move on to the next slide to say, hey, we got low temperatures, the inland waterways of the southeast in the lower to mid 50s. Areas of south central will generally be, 46 at Glen Ellen, but otherwise around or a bit above 50 degrees at most locations. And then for Tuesday afternoon, temperatures around 60 or so across the southeast, and as we head through the south central areas, coastal areas, 50s to lower 60s, but back up into the 60s, including Anchorage, 64. Warmer though, McGrath, look at that, 76 degrees. A few areas that way on Tuesday could be approaching 80. Morning lows on Wednesday will be down around 50 or so. Throughout the inner waterways of the southeast, and upper 40s to low 50s. South central areas, though, a bit warmer in the Kuskokwim and the Yukon deltas. And then high temperatures Wednesday afternoon will be lower 60s, 60 to lower 60s throughout the southeast, 64 there at Ketchikan, 59 at Juneau. And as we head westward, 64 at Anchorage as well as at Kodiak, and readings should be up into the 70s once you get west of the Alaska Range, though a few areas like Talkeetna and more down toward the Matsu Valley could see readings in the lower 70s. Along the Arctic coast, lows tonight will be just above freezing as that front approaches, and then generally around 50 along the Yukon River and 40s through the Seward Peninsula. Temperatures Tuesday afternoon will warm up close to 80 or so there in the Yukon Flats. Could see some lower 80s as that cold front approaches, and a chance of a few thunderstorms developing in the afternoon and evening. It'll begin to cool down, though, along the Arctic coast with readings mainly in the 40s. Lows Wednesday morning along the Arctic coast will generally be around freezing, and in the 50s throughout the Yukon River Valley, and then extending westward 40s for the Seward Peninsula, Nome there at 49. And then as we go into Wednesday, it'll be a bit more in the way of cloud cover, not quite as warm as Tuesday there through east central areas, along with some scattered showers and isolated storms. We will see at least, as I said, warm, but not as warm as what we've seen. Now, across the southwest, we are looking for low temperatures Tuesday morning, around 50 degrees in many areas. Coastal areas will be generally in the mid and upper 40s, and that extends out along the Alaska Peninsula into the Aleutian chain. And then for Tuesday afternoon, look at that. It's going to be rather warm. You can get up above 70, Bethel toward Aniak, and then on up further north and east all the way up through McGrath to Galena. Could see temperatures mid-upper 70s. And then for Wednesday morning, lows along the Yukon and Kuskokwim River basins generally in the lower 50s, though 40s, mid-upper 40s along the southwest coast, and again extending out along the length of the Alaska Peninsula into the Aleutians. And high temperatures Wednesday afternoon should manage to get back up at least into the 70s along the Yukon River and the Kuskokwim River. And temperatures a little warmer there along the Alaska Peninsula, back up around 60 to the lower 60s, and readings out across the Aleutians into the lower 50s for highs. So here's a look at the temperature outlook for Sunday, July 18th through Thursday, July 22nd. And if you look to the right side of your screen, you can continue to see the brick red indicating much above normal temperatures, northern Rockies, northern plains. This is helping south central east portions of Alaska see above normal temperatures in this time frame. So we are definitely looking toward some warmer temperatures this week into next week compared to what we've seen the previous 2 weeks across especially south central areas and the west side of the state. And a check of the precipitation potential. It is looking like precipitation may average a bit below normal from south central areas into the panhandle. That again is from Sunday, July 18th through Thursday the 22nd, with above normal precipitation returning to west central areas and the northwest. I know you've just started to dry out now this week, so that's why I told you, especially the interior west and southwest. This could be some of the nicer weather you've seen here so far this entire summer. So get out, try to make good use of that time. If not to play, at least get some projects done that are weather dependent, that require that dry and warmer weather. So that does it as far as taking a look at how things are going to shape up here statewide. And otherwise, as I said, as we head into this week, warm temperatures the next couple of days across the southwest interior.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Here's your aviation weather if you have a flight planned for Tuesday into Wednesday. Well, we continue to watch a low pressure system weaken over the Gulf of Alaska, and with the moisture spinning and circulating around it in a counterclockwise fashion, we'll continue to see IFR conditions across portions of the southeast panhandle, all the way along the southern coast on into the Kenai and Cook Inlet. Elsewhere in the north, we have a cold front dropping southward along the Arctic coast and north slope where IFR conditions will be. And then extensive areas of IFR conditions along the west coast beneath a ridge of high pressure that's helping to keep that marine layer in place. And as we go through Tuesday afternoon, that cold front will slowly press south and southeastward across northern parts of the state to the Brooks Range, and it'll also tend to increase winds from the southwest out ahead of it, especially around the Yukon Flats. And then across areas of the Gulf, still areas of IFR Tuesday afternoon, with that low pressure continuing to slowly fill and weaken, with areas of IFR along and off the west coast and in stretching down the length of the Aleutian chain. Wednesday morning, pretty good VFR conditions across much of the Yukon Valley in the interior. Still IFR conditions along the Arctic coast and then through portions of the southeast and much of the northern Gulf of Alaska, and then along the west coast and the Alaska Peninsula out across the Bering. For Wednesday afternoon, colder air will be pressing into the northeast, and with that front sagging southward, there could be a few isolated thunderstorms there along the Alaska Highway-Alcan border in the afternoon. Otherwise, general VFR conditions will prevail across much of the interior, with areas of IFR along the Arctic coast as well as portions of the northern Gulf and along and off of the west coast in through the Bering. So, past conditions on Tuesday, AKwx should generally hold on to VFR conditions, as will Adigan, even though that front will be pressing southward slowly through the day. Down around Lake Clark and Merrill, MVFR conditions are anticipated, especially the east entrances. West entrance, the further west you fly into the Kuskokwim River Basin, you'll see VFR conditions. Same thing with the Rainy Pass, MVFR, especially in the morning, but as you fly further north, expect VFR, and that'll be the case also for Windy Pass, MVFR, but more in the way of VFR conditions the farther north you fly. Isabel will start with MVFR conditions, but should improve to VFR. In Metasta, we'll also see some MVFR conditions to the west and south, but VFR the further north that you fly. Tanita will start out with IFR conditions, becoming MVFR. And Portage will also see IFR conditions, especially over Prince William Sound, but improving to MVFR with better conditions the further west you fly, west of the west entrance. And Chilkoot and White should generally hold on to MVFR conditions throughout the day on Tuesday. Quick check of freezing levels. They are below 6,000 feet from around Prince William Sound to Yakutat, beneath that area of low pressure. And then to the west, they are above 12,000 feet around the Bering Strait into much of the west central locations where there is that dome of warmer air. Icing potential will exist between 11,000 feet and a flight level of 19,000 feet in portions of the southern panhandle, as well as around the Kenai and Cook Inlet. And looking at jet stream level winds, that low pressure circulation remains over the northern Gulf of Alaska. It's slowly weakening with onshore flow from the southwest to 70 knots in portions of the southeast panhandle. And on the backside, northeast winds just west of Cook Inlet there, upwards to 90, I should say northeast winds upwards to 90 knots, and then weak high pressure over the Bering Strait down to 9,000 feet. That low pressure circulation remains in the northern Gulf, and high pressure there situated around the Bering Strait. And then as we drop down to 3,000 feet, still weak low pressure circulation remaining along the Gulf Coast, and then also weak high just southwest there of Bristol Bay, out over the southeast Bering Sea. And then you also notice winds picking up along the Arctic coast just north of there as that cold front boundary slips southward. And the most likely area of turbulence on Tuesday will be around Prince William Sound over toward Yakutat along the southern coast, and then areas of the interior possibly ahead of that cold front could develop some turbulence around the Yukon Flats Tuesday afternoon. And that's your flight weather. Be sure to always check the latest conditions and forecast, and if you are heading out, have a safe flight.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder, and joining us here today is Eric Stevens from the Geographic Information Network of Alaska at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, GINA for short. And Eric, you frequently come on the show to tell us about these really cool things that we're doing with satellites over Alaska and how we can use these really awesome tools. But I'm thinking all the while there has to be a mad scientist somewhere working on the next cool thing in the satellite laboratory. What is being developed today?
Right. Well, you know, when I was a kid growing up in the boonies in North Dakota there, on Sunday after church, the old people, like my parents and their parents, would gather and have coffee and talk. And I kind of eavesdropped on them a little bit. And the theme of a lot of these conversations seemed to be, well, isn't it amazing what they can do these days, someone would say.
Sure.
And I was thinking, well, I don't know, I was too young.
Right.
Well, now I'm old enough in the weather satellite business.
You can remember when.
The new generation of weather satellites, I'm starting to say, isn't it amazing what they can do these days? Because it's always improving.
Yes.
Maybe an analogy here is like television. Television started in black and white, then it went to color. Analog signal transitioned to digital here a number of years ago. Standard definition becomes high definition. Right. Well, weather satellites are changing too. First weather satellites went up around 1960, not that long ago. No. It's comparatively young science. And every time a new series of satellites is launched, we learn from the past, so the mad scientists decide, well, we could make the next satellite even better in such and such a respect.
Yes.
And now the United States is on the verge of launching, or in progress of launching, a series of new geostationary satellites that are better than ever before.
Okay.
Let's take a look at some of the previews of what these new satellites can do.
Peek inside the lab here, okay.
Yeah, and so we'll peek in, and here are some mad scientists and mad technicians dressed in bunny suits. This is, believe it or not, this is the business end of a weather satellite under construction in a clean room. You don't want a speck of dust on the lens of a weather satellite's camera. So this is done in a clean environment. They are building a geostationary satellite there.
Oh, cool.
This new generation of satellites, if you had to answer the question, why are these better? Why do we care?
Okay.
You could answer it with 3 words: faster, better, more. The new generation of satellites are faster than the older ones. The images are sharper, they're better, and there's more spectral channels. We'll talk about that.
Any one of these called Steve Austin? It sounds faster, better, stronger.
Yeah. You know what, though? These things cost more than $6 million.
Yeah, I'm sure.
They're pricey, but they are an essential tool for the Weather Service to fulfill its mission of protecting lives and property.
Exactly.
You got to have the tool to do the job, and it helps all of us when we get the accurate forecast, the warning in time, and this is the tool. Faster. On left here, we see what the old generation of satellites could scan in 5 minutes. On the right, that's what you get in 5 minutes, the whole planet, or at least one side of it. So it's faster. That means you can take more images over a given amount of time and make smoother movie loops out of that. Because animating movie loops really helps you highlight a feature that maybe you can't see as well in a single image.
Absolutely does, yep.
Let's zoom into a small piece of real estate like Texas.
Sure.
And we can see here a satellite that has a 1-minute movie loop visible light. You can see thunderstorms boiling there.
Yeah, look at that.
Yeah, the rippling of the top of the thunderstorm. This is a fun movie loop. We're going to be able to see things like this more and more often because of the new satellites being generated. Some things are only evident in animation. So that's faster. Well, what's better? We're able to now have sharper imagery than before. The Japanese have a satellite that uses the same imager that is on the new generation of satellites that America is launching too. An imager, that's just a word for camera. It's the camera on a weather satellite. We have something called the Advanced Baseline Imager.
Sounds important.
ABI. It's important enough it has an acronym. Everything's an acronym. Well, an ABI-like instrument is here over the Western Pacific, and we can see this color image. This is what a human eye might see if you were riding on the satellite. But it's a little bit fuzzy. With new technology, you can post-process the image taken by the satellite to highlight and sharpen some of the features. So this image here of the Western Pacific then becomes this image. Thanks to the processing techniques, yes, this is the newest technology. So we've got a new satellite that can provide better data than ever before. And on the ground, we can process it better than before as well to really sharpen up the imagery and to give us a better view of the weather than ever before. So faster and better and More. What do we mean by more? Well, on the older generation of satellites, the imager, the camera, had 5 slices of the spectral pie, visible imagery, infrared imagery, something we can't see from the human eye. A lot of different slices of the pie. We're going from 5. The new imager has 16 slices. Each slice has its own relevance. Some are best for volcanic ash, for smoke, for dust, for telling the difference between smoke and dust, which can look similar under some infrared channels, but other ones bring out certain things. All of these 16 bands are important. In fact, some of the mad scientists, they didn't want 16, they wanted 24. There's always more you can do.
Right.
But that'll be the next generation of satellites. So now we say, isn't it amazing what we can do these days? And you know what? It makes you think, well, what's the future going to be like too? It's so important to be able to know what's going on now in the weather. If you're going to forecast the future, you got to know where things are now. And satellites are the way to see that, especially in Alaska, where we don't have as many observations down on the ground. The satellites fill in the holes.
Yeah, really important stuff. And I love hearing about what we can see right now, but I love thinking about what is possible in the future. It's amazing stuff. And since you paid for it, it's a good time to learn about it. If you'd like, check out the website at www.goes-r.gov. And as I understand, it's a really easy website to use.
Oh yeah, a lot of good information about what these new satellites mean to Americans. And it's the Weather Service's mission to protect lives and property, and this is the tool how to do it.
Cool stuff, Eric. Thanks so much for sharing that with us today, and thank you for joining us right here in Alaska Weather Facts. We'll see you next time. And now, marine weather around Alaska.
We begin today's marine weather segment with the sea ice edge, and as you can see, the lower Chukchi Sea is fairly ice-free with the exception of areas there in far eastern Russia. Otherwise, the ice continues to break up and melt, and that is the case even along the Arctic coast, though it is a slower process, and we are watching a cold front approaching from the north and northwest that'll be pushing through the Arctic coast and North Slope overnight into Tuesday morning, bringing a little cooler weather here for the midweek. In the meantime, for the southeast inner waterways on Tuesday, winds somewhat variable, northwesterly at Ketchikan, 10 knots, 2-footers, and as we go up through Juneau and Lynn Canal south, winds 10 to 15 knots, waves 2 to 3 feet. Out south end outer waters around 10 knots, variable 5-foot waves, and winds out of the generally out of the southeast there, Gustavus on up toward Yakutat at 15 knots and waves 6 feet. Wednesday, we are looking for the inner waterways winds at Ketchikan out of the west, 10 knots, 2-footers, 10 to 20 knots from the south, the highest there up through Lynn Canal where there could be some 3-4-foot waves. Otherwise, pretty benign seas for a change. We had some gales over the weekend west of Yakutat, which is rather unusual for summertime. And you can see winds will be 10 knots or less and swells generally 4 to 5 feet. And also across south central areas, the winds have come down. We had those gales over the weekend, which was unusual for this time of year, but still northeasterly winds off the Kenai, 20-25 knots, waves around 6 feet, 15 knots from the northeast, and waves 3 feet in Prince William Sound. A little more variable winds in Cook Inlet there at around 10 to 15 knots, waves a few feet. And again on Wednesday, relatively light winds, 10 to 15 knots there in the Gulf, somewhat variable, waves 2 to 4 feet. And then in Cook Inlet, winds at least Homer northward will be out of the south-southwest, 15 to 20 knots, waves around maybe 3 or 4 feet. And across the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island, winds have also fallen off, somewhat variable in the 10 to 15 knot range. Northeasterly in Shelikof Strait, 4-foot waves, but only 4-footers there on the Pacific side, and westerly winds 10 to 15 knots, waves a couple of feet there on the Bering side. Wednesday, not much change in that winds are not especially strong, 10 to 15 knots, waves on the Pacific side, generally 4 to 6 feet and only a couple of feet on the Bering side. And as we drop down through the Aleutians, winds there's an area of low pressure passing south and east of the eastern Aleutians, so backside of that, winds are going to go to the northeast and north around 15 knots. And further west, winds are 10 to 15 knots from the west, and swells will generally be 6 to 7 feet on the Pacific side and 3 to 5 feet on the Bering side. and even lighter winds, variable winds across the eastern Aleutians around 10 knots for Wednesday, with waves 2 to 3 feet on the Bering side and 5-6 feet on the Pacific side. And going to the west, you can see winds there not especially that strong either. Some onshore flow around 10 knots there near Nunivak Island. Waves 2 to 3 feet. Variable around St. Paul and St. George at 10 knots. And offshore flow there 10 knots in Norton Sound with waves a couple of feet. And look for Wednesday to onshore flow at from Emanak on through Hooper Bay down toward Bristol Bay there. Winds generally out of the west, 15 knots, waves 2-3 feet. And finally, along the northwest coast, the Seward Peninsula, winds are out of the south there, 15 to 20 knots, waves 4 to 5 feet, but more behind the front, more out of the northeast and east, 10 to 15 knots from Point Hope northward to Wainwright, and then winds along the Arctic coast, northwesterly 15 knots with areas of ice. And for Wednesday, post-frontal winds will generally be out of the north along the Arctic coast, 15 to 20 knots, turning a little more northeasterly to easterly there, south of Wainwright to Point Hope. And then offshore from Kotzebue Sound, and waves in the lower Chukchi Sea generally 4 to 5 feet. And then a quick check, surface map, low pressure winding down there in the Gulf of Alaska. There's that cold front working its way along the Arctic coast up in through the North Slope and Brooks Range, and that'll press further inland that front on Tuesday. Showers, a few thunderstorms. Overall, though, winds are not especially strong in this particular regime, and the low pressure system will continue to weaken Tuesday into Wednesday with just some diminishing areas of light rain along portions of the south central and southeast coast. So have a good night, everybody, and join us again tomorrow.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.